Hello, welcome to Best Friend's dog training videos. Teaching a dog to go to a specific place can be helpful at those times when you need your dog to settle down or stay in a particular spot for a while. Your dog can be out of the way, but also in a comfortable and safe area. This is a great cue to use when someone comes to the door, you are making dinner, or you just need to not have your dog underfoot. The goal of this training is to have your dog stay in his place until released. You'll need to choose a release word to tell your dog when it's okay to get off his place.
Free.
At Best Friends, we use the word free. To get started, you'll need a mat, blanket, and a dog bed or towel. Put the dog bed or towel on the floor and stand next to the mat with your dog paying attention to you. With the arm that is closest to the mat, toss a treat onto it. As soon as the dog steps onto the mat, use a clicker or say your marker word. You can even give the dog more treats when he is on the mat. We want to make it a party once your dog goes on the mat, to encourage him to go to and stay on the mat. Once the dog has eaten the treats, get his attention, say your release word, and toss another treat, this time off the mat. When he gets off the mat, there is no need to use a clicker or marker word. In fact, you can just ignore your dog so that he is not reinforced for getting off the mat. Repeat 10 times. For now, make sure that you pick up the mat whenever you are not actively training. If you're using your dog's bed to train, put a towel or blanket on top of the bed during your training sessions and remove it when you're done. In the next step, we are asking the dog to go to his place with just a hand signal and no food lure. Point to the mat next to you. If the dog goes over to the mat, click and toss a treat onto the mat. Then say your release word and toss a treat away from the mat. Repeat 4 times. If the dog goes to the mat for 4 or 5 of the 5 repetitions, move on to the next step. If he goes to the mat 3 or fewer times, go back to step 1. Now that your dog knows the basic behavior, you'll need to decide on a verbal cue. The cue can be any word you wish. At Best Friends, we use the word place. Whatever word you pick, make sure you use that word consistently. For this step, you should stand near the mat, give the verbal cue, and point to the mat. As soon as your dog steps onto the mat, mark the behavior and give him a treat. Say your release word and toss a treat away from the mat. Do this 10 times and then move on to the next step. Now that your dog is going to the mat with a verbal cue, it's time to ask him for the behavior you want on the mat. Once he's on the mat, ask him to sit or lie down. When he does, mark the behavior and give him a treat. Whether you choose to have him sit or lie down, just make sure you are consistent. Don't ask him to sit one time and lie down another time. If you want your dog to stay on the mat for a longer amount of time, you might want to teach him to lie down on it, which is more comfortable for him. Once he's eaten the treats, release him from the mat using your release word. Do this exercise 9 more times. For this step, we'll see if the dog has learned the behavior we want on the mat. Cue the dog to go to the mat, and see if he does the behavior on his own once he's on the mat. If he does, click and reward. Do this exercise 5 times. If he does the desired behavior 3 or fewer times, repeat the prior step. If he sits or lies down 4 or 5 times, move on to the next step. Now that the dog is consistently going to the mat and taking the position that you want him to be in, it's time to teach him how to stay there for longer periods. We'll show you how to do this using sit as a desired position. Mark the behavior with a click or marker word and give a treat as soon as he sits on the mat. A moment later, while he's still sitting, click and treat him again. The idea is to mark the behavior as fast as necessary, but as slow as possible. So click and treat the dog every second for sitting, for 5 continuous seconds. Then release him. Let him move around a bit before asking him to repeat the exercise. Pretty quickly, you'll want to vary how frequently you are treating, and slowly work up to a longer continuous time of sitting on the mat. This last step is optional, but some have found it useful to change a dog's cue to go to his place from a word to a sound in the environment. For example, if you like your dog to go to his place when people come to the house, you can train him to go to his bed when he hears the doorbell or someone knocking. In this example, we'll have someone ring the doorbell. Then we give the dog the verbal cue he already knows. When the dog goes to his place, click and treat. Repeat 10 times, and then just give the new cue, in our case the doorbell sound. If the dog goes to his place, click and treat. If not, do the exercise using both cues a few more times.
Good boy.
Teaching your dog the place cue can take a little bit of time, but it's well worth it in the long run.